Hello, everyone. Today I have a wonderful guest, an accomplished cybersecurity professional with 3 decades of experience, someone who has worked in US cabinet level agencies and multinational Fortune 250 companies. Welcome to the podcast, Mike Mullins. Glad to have you, Mike, in our podcast. You have spent nearly 30 years in global network security. What originally drew you into cybersecurity?
Thank you for the introduction. Well, it seemed like a natural progression to combine all of the areas of knowledge that I accumulated during my studies and the different IT roles that I worked in.
Wonderful. So, looking back, what's the biggest shift you have witnessed from early network security to today's cyber landscape?
Well, early security was about reacting to events. It wasn't until we created a defense in depth approach that's when things started to change from reactive to proactive.
Great. Wonderful, Mike. So, Mike, you have worked with both US cabinet level agencies and Fortune 250 companies. What's one key difference in how they approach security?
Well, good question. The public and private sectors are dramatically different and require a different focus, but the same mindset. The public sector is focused solely on the threat and reducing or eliminating the threat, whereas the private sector has to balance the cost, both financially and operationally. Money isn't unlimited in the private sector, and you need to be able to speak to the funding source, typically your board, in a language they understand, which is risk versus reward.
Excellent, Mike. I think I completely acknowledge that because I have also been working in both the sectors. When it comes to the private sector, essentially the investment does matter, and the ROI is one of the very key aspects which the board looks at. Thank you so much for sharing your very valuable perspective. Well, moving ahead, right? What are the most underestimated threats which organizations still ignore today?
That's a good question, and it's the reason I stay up at night. Third party through vendors, hiring the adversary by not doing thorough background checks and inviting people into your company that aren't vetted, or compromise of key people.
So I think if you allow me, Mike, you made a very interesting point, which is essentially the third party or the vendors that every company has today, right? Any specific incident that you'd like to probably make our audience aware, which is probably worth mentioning today?
There's has been several very prominent compromises of companies, very large companies with probably good cybersecurity programs, but they didn't vet their vendors, and the vendor got compromised, and then the advanced persistent threat was able to come through the vendor to compromise that organization as well. And typically, the vendors don't have as good of security as you do, so you really have to vet them.
Understood. Yeah, uh, very practical. So, in your experience, Mike, where do most enterprises fail? Is it technology, processes, or it's just that the mindset of the management or the employees are not in the right place?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the two out of three. Our workforce today has become very technically savvy. Everybody. It doesn't matter whether they're a developer, whether they're in infrastructure, or if they're working in in HR. They're very technically savvy. So it's not a technology issue. It's a mindset where people know they are there are threats out there, but they don't think compromises will ever happen to them because they don't see the big picture in the organization's value. This leads to process failures because they're not implementing the right procedures to mitigate or eliminate these threats.
Excellent, Mike. I think makes a lot of sense. I think the big picture is critically important. Well, taking this very important a point ahead, the big picture, right? So you have built global cybersecurity strategies. What are the three non-negotiables every organization must have?
Good question. And this is really the tipping point between being a CISO and just being an IT security manager, because the number one thing that you have to have that's non-negotiable is the board level and C-suite buy-in to the program. That's number one. Uh, if they're not on board with the security program, there is no program. Number two is the lack of working together with other departments. People generally want to do what's best for their division to meet their schedules. And if security is always saying no, they'll go around you so that they can accomplish their tasks. You have to work with them to find a way that they can achieve their goals in a secure way. And lastly, people need to be realistic about their strategies and policies. If you can't or don't measure or monitor something, it has no business in your policy because it can't be enforced.
Excellent, Mike. I'm sure the people who are listening to it are definitely going to take away this very important three key points that you have mentioned. I think these are non-negotiable. Agreed. So now going ahead with AI coming in, we even as a startup, we also start listening a lot that, okay, we have to be agile, we have to move fast, and we are actually seeing a lot of security breaches happening. Very recently, we have seen in the AI world packages which are very important, like Light LLM, Axion, getting breached, right? Companies are adopting packages even without thinking that whether that is a supply chain attack which might happen below. So what essentially is happening is everybody is pushing for speed, whereas security does need some space where we need to give decent amount of thought, identify the right loopholes, and then probably take the next step. So taking this point ahead, right? So how do you balance security versus business agility, especially in large enterprises, and with the new AI aspect which is coming in and asking everyone to innovate faster and move faster?
It's a good question, but it's easy to answer because your security program needs to be a working partner with the different divisions of your business and not evolve out of just some lofty goals like achieving ISO certification or NIST certification. They need to be a working partner and involved in all aspects of the business. If the security is so strict that it slows down or stops business process, then you're leading your company to a very secure failure as a business. As the business grows and matures, the security program needs to evolve with that growth.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike, for this very valuable perspective. If you allow me to double click on this a bit, right? So now, when we talk about balanced security, right? If you can just elaborate a bit, right? How does balanced security look like for large enterprises?
Well, the balance it starts with working with the enterprise on its operations, and not a lot of people think of security as something that you layer on at the end. That's not the way it works. You bring that into the process in the beginning when you're developing your infrastructure. Then you don't wait until the infrastructure is up before you try to secure it, you work with the infrastructure engineers to make sure that the different rules and firewall rules are in place and the port restrictions are in place as the infrastructure is being developed. And that way, it's easier to do that way. It's a lot more work, but it's easier in the long run because you're not going back and looking at something that you've never seen before and trying to layer on security. You're actually building security as the business grows.
I think this is excellent, Mike. A lot of organizations I have seen where CISO and the security teams comes at a later point of time.
Yeah.
I believe you have rightly advised that they should be there from day one. So they are part of the process when we start probably new development of probably for a new application, or probably we are trying to extend an application. So they should be there from day one. Agreed. So now moving ahead, if you can share a real world example where a strong security strategy prevented a major breach.
Sure. I just, well, it's a couple of years ago. I just came on board a startup and there were less than 15 people on the ground and everyone had full admin privilege, which is very typical in a startup. You only have a few people and a lot of things need to get done. So the first week I designed a least privilege model and briefed it to the other departments. You know, you gotta get their buy-in and understanding, and I implemented that strategy. And it brought a lot of work onto me because we hadn't hired an IT manager yet. So every time we bring somebody on, I've got to massage their privileges and make sure that they have exactly what they need and nothing more. But after I did that, less than a week later, we had someone get compromised through email, and the event and data was limited to that department. It didn't spread throughout the entire organization. Now, that simple strategy limited our exposure and didn't affect the entire company. So it's very effective.
I think excellent, Mike. I think this is a very pertinent example. I believe the leaders who would be listening to this would definitely acknowledge and learn from this example. So great. Moving ahead, right? What are the biggest mistakes companies make when implementing security frameworks?
So I've seen this a lot of times, not adapting those frameworks to operations and tying the requirement to a regulation. Without a regulatory requirement and an approved risk appetite statement from the board, everything is optional.
Understood. Very helpful. So I'm just shifting the gears a bit. Now, what role does governance play when scaling security across global operations? I'm sure, I mean, with your large experience across the global operations, right, you are the right person to probably help my audience understand this.
Yeah, and it's essential. You know, when I was first starting out in security, I hated governance and I hated compliance. But I've come to realize that it's essential, because if you aren't following regulations, then you are exposing the company and its officers to huge liability, and you're doing a disservice to your business because it's likely to fail.
Excellent, Mike. I think this is very valuable. I believe in our day-to-day operations, we mostly think process and technology, but I think there is a larger player, which is governance, specifically the regulations and compliances that guide us. And we have to go ahead and I mean, we have to be doing a good handshake and working with the governance as we proceed. Moving ahead, right, with the rise of AI and autonomous agents, right, how is cybersecurity fundamentally changing?
Good question, and we just discussed this the other day in a board meeting. Number one, everybody doesn't need access to AI. Number two, it becomes another avenue of exploitation unless implemented properly. And it's just a tool like everything else. Not everybody needs the tool, but you have to implement it properly.
Wonderful. I think this is a very unique perspective. I really appreciate, Mike. If you could probably double click a bit when you say that not everybody needs AI. If you can just tell me about broadly what the personas who probably should not be given exposure to AI, whereas others who should be given.
Well, number one, it should be paid AI because free AI, whatever they put up there, other people will have access to it. So they're going to resell that information. So it should be paid. And that way you can limit who has access to the information that you post in the AI tool. Where I've seen it used properly is with developers. So help in writing code, it's been very, very well received. It's very well received in HR when trying to recruit people. It's not very useful, or I don't think it's extremely useful in infrastructure because you either know what the requirements are, and then you go out and implement the right hardware for the organization, or you don't. But those are two areas that I've seen that it's been very useful in marketing as well. But it should all be paid. There shouldn't be any free AI.
Wonderful, Mike. I think this is again a very valuable perspective that we understand it's a risk. We understand that there might be challenges which you don't know today. So it's better to expose the risk to only those who need productivity enhancement, or probably who would need some critical acts to be put together, which is either in the form of innovative aspects or basically increasing their productivity for better outcomes. So this is very helpful, Mike. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I really also would like to double click on this, right? So while we are working with very critical organizations, maybe in the government, we have seen also people talking, as you rightly mentioned, right? It has to be paid AI. And also, I think sovereignty matters, right? Where the data is going, whether it is within the geographical premises, within your premises. So I think a combination of both really is important to ensure that the data does not get used for the purposes which it is not intended to. So thank you again. Moving ahead, what new risks do AI systems introduce that traditional security models are not prepared for?
Well, data leakage is first on my mind. People are disclosing internal information, policies and code, just to name two areas, to untrusted and unknown repositories. So that's the biggest areas I see.
Wonderful. On that aspect, Mike, I would also like to ask you this, right? It's a very short uh, question which I have, which is that, do you see AI as more of a defensive tool, or it's an attack vector today?
Oh, it's both, and will be utilized by both by smart CISOs and by your adversaries. So just because the enemy uses it doesn't make it a bad tool.
Excellent. I think it's a very interesting perspective that it can be both used by you to innovate or by your enemy to be doing adversarial actions on your system. But yeah, I mean, both will be using it. So it's not the reason that we abandon it because it can be an attack vector. Excellent. So if you were designing a security strategy today from scratch, how would AI fit into it?
Yeah. Well, and I've designed several today from scratch. And I've said these before, it's a tool like anything else. Everyone doesn't need access to it, and only a few will need paid access to limit the exposure of that information beyond the company. But treat it like a tool and use it as such.
Wonderful. I think this clears a lot of doubt, which probably my young leaders in security have. Thank you so much. I mean, this is where the vast experience helps. Thank you again, Mike. So, Mike, moving ahead, you have authored over 250 articles. What are some recurring themes leaders consistently struggle with that you have found out?
It's privilege and maintaining a least privileged environment as that environment grows. That's what people struggle with the most.
Understood. I think if I probably double click a bit, right? So when we talk about privilege, right? I think privilege is something which has been there for ages. And when we are seeing the new AI frameworks which are coming in, they do have vulnerabilities related to which leads to privilege escalation and other issues, or even lateral movement once somebody penetrates it. Now, my minimal question here is that, and in fact, we have been involved finding out one of the vulnerabilities in a very recent framework that is used for agent building. So my minimal question here is that privilege has been an issue for a long time. Why do we see that it is recurrently not being addressed even in newer frameworks?
Well, because people aren't going back to the original privileges that they pushed out to to certain divisions, and they're just creating them on the fly. And 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 that's not bad, but they have to document that so that in the future you replicate that across the organization and you don't end up with a bunch of people with privileges all over the place. And also, um, it's very typical to find people move from different departments in a company, and you need to be able to easily revoke certain privileges and add certain privileges. And if you maintain a good least privilege model where you know what privileges they should have, then you're not guessing.
Wonderful. I think this is very, very helpful for my audience. Well, moving ahead, Mike, I think your vast experience is going to help the new age CISOs. What advice would you give to CISOs who are navigating today's rapidly evolving threat landscape?
Your job's never done. Never stop learning about threats. They are constantly studying your environment, so you should study theirs as well. Also, develop a resource group and share non attributed information. You can't be the expert on everything, but you can be an expert resource to others on a particular area.
Wonderful, Mike. Mike, if you allow me to ask one question, which is specific to probably your journey, right? So, have you faced any adversary, without naming any adversary who you have seen recurrently coming and trying to probably attack your system, and you fixing it, then again the same adversary coming and attacking it, and it has probably created a lot of I would say a lot of probably chaos and challenges for you and the organization to essentially face that. Any personal experience that you have? If not, then it's perfectly fine as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, most definitely. Since I've spent about 10 years in the crypto exchange arena, I've definitely seen several um, good. They're very, these are organizations. They're not just people on the internet trying to break in. These are organizations, government-funded organizations that are trying to break into our exchange and steal crypto dollars. Um, and so, you have to focus on their TTPs, their tools, techniques, and procedures, and how they do their compromises, and then you have to prevent that from occurring. And by forming a CISO group and talking to each other, you gain operational experience from other people. So it may have not happened to you yet, but this is probably something that will be happening to you, and you can prepare for it and defend against it appropriately.
Wonderful, Mike. I think this is very helpful. Y- If you had to summarize your 30 years of cybersecurity experience into just one principle, what would it be?
Well, that would be that security boils down to people, access, and information. That hasn't changed. The, the vectors of compromise has changed, and if you think like an advanced persistent threat group and protect those three areas while communicating with your C-suite and your board, then you'll be successful. Constantly evaluate your cyber strategy and operations because your job is never done.
Wonderful. Mike, thank you so much. I think this few minutes of conversation I had was really eye-opening. I believe it's 30 years of experience probably compressed within this probably 30 minutes that we have been interacting. And I'm sure the people who would be listening, who are listening to us today, and who would be listening to us in future, right, would definitely be enlightened with the very important information that you have provided.
Thank you,
Again,
Sheila.
again, thank you so much, Mike, for taking your time out and joining us and sharing your very valuable perspective.